Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with my review of Ghostbusters Afterlife, the new reboot of the Ghostbusters franchise, focusing largely on the daughter and grandchildren of Egon Spengler, played by the late Harold Ramis in Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. Quick thought, really, just like the only quick thoughts it's fun and nostalgic. It hits all, just the right ways. But anyway, moving on. On our cast of note, we've got McKenna Grace as Phoebe Spengler, science-inclined granddaughter of Egon, who, like I said, science-inclined. She does tend to take after her grandfather. Finn Wolfhard as Trevor Spengler, who's Phoebe's 15-year-old older brother. He's honestly just a fairly typical teenage boy. Carrie Coon as Callie Spengler, who is Egon's daughter, his estranged daughter, I should say, and she doesn't really have the highest opinion of her father, as he kind of just, she feels like he just kind of abandoned her. Paul Rudd plays Gary Gruberson, who's a seismologist as well as middle school teacher in the small town of Somerville, Oklahoma, which is where Egon retired many, many years ago. As a kid, he wanted to be a Ghostbuster, and I'll be honest, as a child of the 80s, I can relate, We got Logan Kim as Podcast, who's a classmate of Phoebe's and the first to ever befriend her. He has a, podcast that dealing with conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But it really found its voice on the 46th episode. We've got Celeste O'Connor as Lucky. She's a fourth-generation Somerville resident who works at the local burger drive-in. She is also Trevor's love interest. Also of note, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, and Annie Potts all reprised their roles from the original movie. But let's move on to our spoiler-free breakdown. So it opens with, Egon's death before introducing his estranged daughter and grandchildren. As they learn of Egon's death and are evicted from their home. So they've inherited a farmhouse he owns out in Oklahoma, so they go out there. Excuse me. Callie has told her kids that they'll only be there for about a week or so while they, sign whatever forms they can, do what they can to sell a place, and then try to get a place, go back to where they were living. Of course, they find out that there's not really much of value there. They've inherited a lot of debt, in fact. Egon is generally referred to as the dirt farmer. But Phoebe learns about who her grandfather was through finding stuff in the house, as well as talking to the summer school teacher, Mr. Gruberson, who even shows her the commercial from the first Ghostbusters movie. And after kind of doing some more digging, she continues to work out what it was Egon was doing, and also the history of Somerville, which apparently was founded in the 20s by Ivo Shandor, who constructed the apartment building that Dana Barrett and Louis Tully lived in Ghostbusters 1. Turns out that the girders that were so important to the construction of the building, the material was mined and refined and turned into girders in Somerville. And in fact, Shandor founded the entire town. Got his name all over the place, including the abandoned mine, which does have a rock carving that appears to that seems to be in you know reference to Gozer. But so yeah, the ups and downs. It's so I mentioned it's nostalgic. It is. It does. There's a lot of nostalgia in the movie, but the movie knows when to rely on nostalgia and when to go a different way. Also of note is the fact that it sometimes will take something that's take it'll sometimes it'll even manage to go a different way with the nostalgia. For example, the little mini Stay Puffs. There's no reason for the mini Stay Puffs except that, you know, to reference the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. There are some reused lines, but there's also just a lot of differences. One big difference is the fact that unlike Ghostbusters 2, Ecto-1 is actually important in this. In Ghostbusters 1 and 2, it's very much it's just the car, that's all. It's not the Batmobile, it's just their car. But with this, it actually does kind of have a feel as though it was the Batmobile for the Ghostbusters, with all manner of fun little gadgets and doohickeys that we never got to see in Ghostbusters 1 or 2. Also, the movie has an excellent use of Easter eggs. There's a point, it's a little thing, there's a point where the glove box in the Ecto-1's glove box gets opened up at one point. There's a Twinkie inside, which is, very, it is explained in the first movie. After all, well, Egon doesn't have fondness for Twinkies, but there's also the whole thing about, if this Twinkie were to represent that whole quote about it, being this gigantic Twinkie, if it were to represent psychotherapeutic energy, the energy that the various types of energy that are required for ghosts. Honestly, the effects look great. I know a lot of people will lament the heavy use of CGI in movies and always point to older movies like from the 80s of their practical effects and how great they looked. But I think we can be a little honest. While Ghostbusters is one of those films that's pretty much perfect, the Terror Dogs, when they're running, when they're like the ones running after Lewis, it looks a little rough. It does not look like it was. They tried their best to make it look like it was actually there, but it's still just. I don't know if the Terror Dogs in this are practical effects or if they're CG, but they look real. They don't. It doesn't look like they were, put in frame by frame. It looks, like I said, real, and not just in close-ups. The cast is great. McKenna Grace really. If the trailers hadn't made it, hadn't kind of dropped in, they're Egon's kids, it would be clear. Even before the first trailers actually said that was Egon, that they're Egon's kids, it's like, like the thought was there. It's like, is that Egon's granddaughter? But yeah, Finn Wolfhard. I mean, yeah, it's funny seeing him, knowing him from Stranger Things, where he's a nerd. And in fact, as shown in, I believe it was the first season, they all love Ghostbusters. And then seeing him in this as just this typical 15-year-old teenage boy, it's really cool. And I dug it. I really dug it. The story, it's actually really good. I do have some other things to say about the story, but we learn more about Egon. We get a lot about what happened after, at least Ghostbusters, if not after Ghostbusters 2. It's never really clear as to whether or not they're admitting that Ghostbusters 2 actually happened or not. But no one mentions the time that the Statue of Liberty smashed through the skylight at one of Manhattan's art museums. So, also, the returning cast members were very well utilized. I would kind of I kind of feel like Ray got the most out of things. But Janine shows up early on. In fact, we learned that Janine was kind of sort of Egon's money manager. You know, made sure that his bills got paid, so on and so forth. So yeah, but she's also in charge of making sure that his daughter gets the house. On the downside, like I mentioned, it does kind of feel like Ghostbusters 2 is disregarded. There's not a clear timeline they're really sticking with for when it was that Egon left. We get a few clear points, like when exactly in time this is supposed to happen. It is supposed to take place in 2021. But yeah, and while the story, I liked the story, I really did. Something that distresses me with the franchise in general is when revisiting the original Ghostbusters, since Ghostbusters 2, the habit with whoever is working on it is to just go back, rather than do something new. It's, hey, let's flesh out the Ivo Shandor stuff. That was kind of neat in the first movie, right? So, I think, however, if we get any further Ghostbusters entries, I think it's pretty safe to say that they're done with the Shandor well. Well, the Shandor Gozer well. Which, yes, Gozer does pop up, recast, but looking like a more, given more effects touches, I guess would be a way to put it. But yeah, it's still good though. It's good. It's fun. Anyway, my final thoughts are that, like I said, it's fun and nostalgic. It fleshes out the Shandor mythos from the original very well, and it does. It seems to disregard Ghostbusters 2, but like I said, it's probably one of the best movies I've seen to really to rely on nostalgia without fully relying on it. But rating, for what it is, I can't. There's that party that doesn't want to say it's 5 out of 5 because there are some issues, but at the same time, I feel like a 4.5 is understating it, and so I gotta go with 5 out of 5. If you're a fan of the Ghostbusters franchise, by all means, check it out. Have a blast. It is just so much fun. And yeah, I really loved it. I had a great time watching it. But anyway, so yeah, just a reminder that yes, I know there hasn't been a comic book out yet this week. We're getting to that. It's going to be done a little bit differently because last week's Marvel books came in around the same time that this week's Marvel books came in, as well as this week's DC books. So we'll likely be doing like tomorrow night, so Friday evening. It'll be the last week's Marvel books. And then Saturday will be, then possibly also on Sunday, we'll be doing up the this week's books. So hopefully, next week's roundup is also going to be postponed, probably till next Saturday, because Thanksgiving. I do work retail, so yeah, I'm going to be a little busy next weekend. But anyway, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal will be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.